Welcome to Undercurrents of Romance, the show that celebrates every subgenre of romantic fiction. In each episode, I peel back the layers of your favorite love stories and chat with the talented authors who bring them to life. I'm your host, Tracey Devlyn. Now, let's dive in with today's guest. Hello, Romantics. I'm here with USA Today bestselling author Eliza Knight to talk about her new release, Confessions of a Grammar Queen. Welcome to the show, Eliza.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to chat about the book and to talk to you.
Ah, very excited to have you here. Anyone who reads Confessions would certainly recognize that you're an animal lover, but my curiosity compels me to ask, why is your turtle named Fish?
Well, I can't take credit for that. We got him during COVID. He ended up in my parents' pool as a little tiny hatchling, I guess is what they're called. I'm not really sure. And so they brought him over, and our oldest daughter said, "Oh, wouldn't it be so funny if we named the turtle Fish?" And it just kind of stuck.
So that's great. That's great. No strategy or anything like that. It was just an off comment. Those are a lot of fun for sure.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get back to animals in a few minutes. I know my listeners are excited to hear more about you. So, if you don't mind, just to get us started, why don't you tell us about yourself and your writing journey, just whatever you'd like to share?
Sure, no problem. So I've always been a storyteller. Even before I knew how to write, I would pick up a crayon and make a little book out of paper and draw princesses and castles and things like that. So it's just kind of always been something ingrained in me. And in high school, I ended up being the editor of my high school newspaper. So I went to college for journalism originally, and I studied journalism for 2 years before I decided I really wasn't so much into like the whole factual short sentence type and I wanted to write books. But I took a different path for a little while, majoring in family studies, and I worked with people with mental illness for a little while, doing some therapy type things. And then I was always writing on the side just for fun because it's just always something that's been really ingrained in me. And
Yeah.
finally, I was like, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and do this. And ironically, I've written in multiple genres, romance, but the other thing is historical fiction, which is a lot of research and a lot of factual writing. So I kind of went back to my roots a little bit there as well.
It sounds like you did a nice job of mixing maybe the two, the factual versus lying for for a living, right?
I really, really enjoy it. So it worked out.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's great. It's always I always enjoy reading historical novels, whether it's historical fiction or historical romances, just because you learn so much from them. Whenever I remember very distinctly when I first started reading historical romance, I'm like, is this real? Or this just it's fiction? Or are they just making this stuff up? And so as I started to learn that a lot of it is very, very real, as far as the setting and things like that goes. So yeah, it's a great place to learn cool things about our history and whatnot.
I agree.
Well, this story takes place in the summer of '63 in New York City, a time when you're seeing headlines about the Vietnam War, and also evidently a time when there are indoor and outdoor headbands, which I was not aware that there were indoor and outdoor headbands. Although you bring a lot of awareness of some weighty, important topics. The book had a playful tone, reminiscent of like a Bridget Jones, or even weirdly, I know this takes us back a long ways, but Mary Richards and Mary Tyler Moore show. So I was just curious if you could tell us a little bit about the story itself and maybe your inspiration for Bernadette.
Sure. So the story, as you said, takes place in the 1960s. It's in New York City, and the main character is Bernadette Swift, and she's a young copy editor who has aspirations of being the first female CEO of a publishing house. And at the time, there were no CEOs of publishing houses. In fact, the first one didn't come about until the late 1980s, which is kind of shocking. I had no idea. And so she's just trying to go about her life, trying to, grow herself in her career and her profession. And it happens that in 1963 that the law was passed for the Equal Pay Act for women. So she's thinking, you know what, it's about time that I stand up for myself and for other women, and we try to get some equal pay here. So it has that sort of a heavier topic in the novel, but Bernadette herself is a playful character, like you said. She's got a cute little dog that she loves. Well, he's not so little, he's giant.
I was gonna say. We'll talk about Frank in a second. Hold on.
Friends, they meet up at the New York Public Library after hours and they read books that are, empowering to women. So I had a lot of fun playing around with that. But the way the book came about was I was on book tour and I was driving and I was trying to think of a new idea, something that I would want to write. And I kept listening to Taylor Swift's song "The Man." And if you've ever heard that song, it's an empowering song about women, and it talks about like if I were the man, whatever if I did this, it would be okay. But since I'm a woman, it's not okay. And I thought, well, that might be something interesting to explore. And at the time, I hadn't ever written in the 1960s or 1950s or anything like that. And so it was an era that I was curious about myself. I love, the whole Mad Men stuff that you mentioned, Mary Tyler Moore. I think that's 60s and 70s. Like that whole era just really interested me. So at that same time on that book tour, I had a stop in New York City and I went to the library and I was thinking, oh my gosh, this would be a perfect place for a book to take place. And I just kind of explored the library, took a bunch of pictures. And so it just kind of compiled like in my brain like that. And eventually I thought, okay, I have a character, Bernadette Swift. Swift, I took from Taylor Swift's last name,
Love that.
uh, little hint there. But that's really how it came about. And I just sort of started playing with it. And I sent a few chapters to my agent and she was like, I love this, go with it.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
that's
Yeah, it was such a great story, and I really, really loved it. And that whole dynamic that you had of her, she's a copy editor at a publishing house, right? So that whole dynamic that you had between her and her coworkers really too, but also it was multi-layered. You had her male coworkers, you had a female coworker, and then you had her boss. And you had her, and then there's a love interest too, right? So you had her acting differently, and we do that, we do that during the day or during the week. People that we encounter, we have a different face and
Mhm.
different response to each of those people. And you did that so magnificently, really.
Yeah.
I can't say enough about Bernadette. She's just very multi-layered, and it's a very inspirational book. And I think that anybody who reads it, even though it took place in the 1960s, I think a lot of what you have in here is still relevant today, unfortunately. And so I think that it can be very inspiring book too, for
Yeah.
those who,
I really wanted it to be a book that is about empowering women and also friendships. Friendships are so important. And that's one of the big parts of this book is that she's developing friendships with all these women and they're all sharing things that are happening. And they're stories that I didn't totally make up. They're things that I've heard about going on now and things that I've heard from, family members that happened in the past. So it's
yeah,
really, really interesting way this world works, really. But I wanted it to
yeah.
in that way, but as you mentioned, also playful. So we're dealing with like some of these things that you might connect with and might think about more seriously, but at the same time, it still comes off as like hopeful.
Yeah, absolutely. And even the situation, she has a brother who's, you know, over in Vietnam and she's worried about him, and that plays into her whole storyline and arc as well. And I tell you, I the name is escaping me. I apologize right now, but it was the place, the Shakespeare place that they would go to. Is that a real thing in New York City, or is that totally from your imagination?
Made that place up, but it sort of reminded me of I went to, gosh, probably 10 or 15 years ago, and it was a club that someone had overtaken for like a literary night. And people were going up to the mic and they were reading, from their books or from their poems or just out of memory, like little stories and little snippets. And it was really, really fun. So I kind of wanted to have that atmosphere where it was like a literary loving place, but with books. So
Yeah, Lady Jane Salon, I bet,
Yes,
right?
yes, exactly.
Yeah, yeah, Hope Tar. Yeah, 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 yeah. I love that too. That was one of the more memorable when I was a member of Romance Writers of America, and Hope Tar did that during one of the conferences years there, and it was amazing. So much fun to have so many fun writers in one place and listening to them read from their books and things. Yeah, and I think that was like a uh the whole atmosphere is like a boudoir kind of atmosphere too, right?
Black and like low lighting. It was fun.
Yeah, it was a great time, great time. All right, well, let's talk about Frank. Frank the Great Dane, so not so little, like you said. He was a former search and rescue trainee, and he's a bit of an urban socialite, right? And and even a great delivery boy. Tell us about Frank.
Based off of a real dog that I actually met. I was visiting my oldest daughter when she was at Ohio State University, and we went to a bar for the evening. And this Great Dane, actually, it was two of them, but he's the one I liked the best. They both walked into the bar, like no owner. They just wandered inside and they were greeting people, and everyone's like, "Oh, hey, Frank," and like giving him a little fry. And I was like, "What is happening right now?" And it turns out the owner was there. He was outside waiting for the dogs to come back after they greeted everyone. But it's just like he was a regular at a bar. And I thought, this dog has the best personality and I need this. And so that's how Frank, like, I'd had him in the back of my mind, knowing I wanted to work him into a story. And so this seemed like the perfect opportunity. As you said, he is a neighborhood socialite. He goes around, he helps people when they're having problems, mostly, if kids are being bullied or whatnot, he's there to help save the day. Um,
Yeah.
has a few quirks of his own, and he ends up helping Bernadette in a situation as well.
Is it okay to mention about the POV or
Sure. Yes, of course. So we do get points of view chapters from Frank, and it's just they're like fun little way like moments of levity. He has a relationship with his neighbor that's a cat, and they have like a little conversation back and forth, and then you get to see him kind of wandering the neighborhood, and Bernadette has no idea that he sneaks out during the day to do all these like silly little things, but. I really, really enjoyed writing from his point of view. I had written from a dog's point of view before in my previous release last year, The Queen's Faithful Companion, and I just had so much fun writing from a dog's point of view that I couldn't help myself.
yeah, he was great. I loved how he called Bernadette my girl, that like he's like, it was not like it was like a friendship kind of thing. Not owner versus, that sort of thing. It was a fun little nugget there. Yeah, it's great. All right. Well, Bernadette's love interest, Graham, what a great forward-thinking guy. I don't know if you could have come up with a more perfect character hero love interest for Bernie. How did Graham come about?
So I really wanted her to have an office romance. And during that time period, it seemed like most of the men at offices were kind of chauvinistic, wanting the women to go get their coffee, things like that. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to have a guy at the office who wasn't like that, who believed that women should have, equal share in jobs and pay and things like that. So he's kind of like supports her in those things, but also lets her deal with them herself. And actually, one of the inspirations for that, I don't know if you're familiar with the movie Legally Blonde, but
Yeah.
love interest there when she goes to intern at the law firm, and then there's another lawyer there who is sort of like helping her along the way and supports her and believes that she should have her position and not be harassed at work and things like that. So I really, really wanted to have that aspect at the office just so that, not all guys are bad.
Yes, you're right.
He was funny too and sweet. And I liked their banter. I had so much fun writing their banter back and forth.
Yeah, he was a little mischievous. It was like you always felt he knew something she didn't, and she was always trying to figure out like what that was. It was really wonderful. I really liked Graham a lot, so great job on that character.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I like to dive into on this show is finding the story's undercurrent with the author. It's that second beating heart of the story. What story undercurrent is flowing beneath Bernadette's love story? And I say Bernadette, not Bernadette and Graham, just because this is completely from, although Frank has a POV, but this is completely from her POV, so it's really her story. Any thoughts on that?
I think for her, it's really figuring out who she is and what she wants. And so she's kind of got all these little things that are going around, building friendships, the secret book club, trying to get a raise at work, trying to get a higher position at work, encouraging other women to ask for a raise or ask for a different position. And then you've got the office romance where she's falling for him, but also feels like that's not appropriate. He's at work, like this could be seen as bad. It could be seen as if, she does get the promotion, that it's only
Yeah.
because she's dating someone that's higher up. And so there's a lot of things that are kind of playing in the background with her own mind. But I think at the core of it, it's really her figuring out who she is and breaking these rules that she's sort of followed her whole life. When the book starts out, she's very strict about a lot of the things that she does, her time, what she does on a Friday. She only reads newspapers on Friday. So, like,
Yeah.
and as the story goes along, she's kind of realizing that she doesn't need to follow all of these rules to be happy, and that maybe breaking some of these rules are actually going to help her, find that ultimate goal. In fact, one of the titles we played with before settling on Confessions of a Grammar Queen is Bernadette Swift Breaks the Rules. So,
Uh,
that's really, for me, I think the undercurrent of it is breaking out of her shell and realizing that she doesn't have to follow all the rules to gain that happiness.
yeah, yeah, I love that. I love that. That's great. That's wonderful. Well, let's switch gears just a little bit. With romance novels, readers love their tropes. What would be two or three tropes that readers, could look forward to while reading Confessions?
Sure. Obviously, the first one I would say would be the office romance, because they have that banter back and forth at work. They kind of meet up. There's this one scene I really enjoyed writing where she's, looking at herself in the reflection of the elevator doors, and he kind of sidles up next to her, and she's, eyeing him up and down, but not trying to be obvious about it. So that was really fun.
Yeah.
Um, I guess kind of maybe like a little bit like forbidden love, because she feels like she shouldn't fall for
Yeah.
this. So there's that. And then they were kind of friends, so maybe friends to lovers. Um,
Yeah.
Definitely formed a friendship before. And she, at some point she's like, hey, I'll go out to dinner with you, but this is not a date. So kind of, that doesn't end up working out for her. Like they're definitely going to fall in love. But I think that's like a good.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Those are wonderful. Those are all tropes that I think readers look forward to over and over again. So that's wonderful. It's good to stock them up. What romance novel have you read recently that you'd recommend and maybe why?
Oh, I just recently read, I'm gonna have to, it is Mimi Matthews, and it was an arc that I read, so I'm not sure that it's come out yet, or maybe it released recently.
Rules for Ruin?
Yes, Rules for Ruin. I
Yeah.
love that book, and it's another book about, empowering empowerment of females, and she did such a good job. There's so much
Yeah.
witty in there. It's sexy, it's historical, which I love. So that would be one I would absolutely recommend.
Yeah, she was on the show a couple of weeks ago, and I loved that book too. I recommend it. I've recommended it a few times to friends. So yeah, it's really
So good.
great.
So good. And I can't wait for the second one. She just did the cover reveal of the second.
It's beautiful, wasn't it? The cover. That's great. So you had mentioned that you've written in a lot of different genres, or a handful of different genres, and I was really curious. And maybe Confessions is the book, or the story, I should say. But is there a story out there that you haven't written yet? And maybe for whatever reason, but you're chomping at the bit, or it's a passion project, or you haven't had time. Is there anything out there that you really want to write, but you just haven't yet?
Yeah, actually there is. Confessions is definitely a book of the heart, and I had so much fun writing that. It's the first book I've written in a long time that I didn't write under contract, and I think that is also like played out on the page, is that I just had so much fun doing it without the pressure. But
Yeah.
probably, let's see, maybe 11 years ago, I'm thinking, because it was 2014, I started writing another Tudor novel, and I am obsessed with the Tudors. I love the Tudors, and it is a bit of a romance. It's a Henry VIII and one of his lesser known, I guess you would call him mistress. So
Yeah.
there's that's a bad thing. But it's a dual timeline, and the other timeline that I have was a modern day romance mixed in with the Tudor timeline. So it's something that I go back to every once in a while when I'm on a break, and I've probably got like 200 pages or something like that. So maybe one day I will get to.
Yeah. Well, I hope you do. I just finished up. I'm in the editing stage of one of my passion project, and it's such a good feeling. And so that's the reason I love to ask that question of authors that come on the show. I really encourage you that if it won't let you go, if it keeps niggling at you to write me, to do it, to really do it.
And it kind of gives us that like mental break. Like,
Yeah.
as obviously we love everything that we're writing or we wouldn't write it, but there's like a certain playfulness to a book that you're not, you know contracted to write. Like, this is just your fun time and you're just
Yeah.
enjoying it. So I definitely would love to be able to finish that one.
Great, great, great. Well, before we go, can you give us a hint of what's coming up next?
Oh, sure. So I have a book called Lost in the Summer of '69. I'm sticking to the '60s again, and it's actually due next week. Um, it's a story. It's three points of view. It's a grandmother, a mother, and a college-aged daughter. And the grandmother has recently been diagnosed with dementia, and so she knows that she's going to at some point lose a lot of her memories. And so she's trying to recapture her youth. And in her youth, she was a musician. And so she hears that there's all these some concerts going on for the summer of '69, of course, Woodstock being the culminating event of my book. And so she decides she's going to take off. She's going to go to these concerts. She's going to try to play and, live this one last wild summer before she starts losing her memories. And her daughter goes over to her house, discovers her mom has disappeared, and then she finds like this little bit of a cryptic like notes, like the name of a hotel and the name of a band. And so she goes home, and she says to her own college age daughter, who's about to go off to Yale for the freshman year. They've finally opened it up to women to go to school there. And she's like, I think I have to go find my mom. Your grandmother is missing, and I think she might be going to these concerts. And so they go on a road trip, and it's a great book for them developing their relationship, because they're kind of at odds with each other. Anyone who's had a kid going off to college knows that that last summer can be a little difficult, with them trying to autonomy and become adults, and the parents not really wanting to let go. And so it's like a fun road trip, mother daughter bonding book. Plus, we get to see all these fun music concerts, and a little bit of star power in there with Jimi Hendrix befriending the grandma. And it's like a heartwarming. I would say it's along the lines of with Confessions of a Grammar Queen, where you're dealing with some heavier topics, but at the same time, it's heartwarming. There's some funny, moments in there. And so I had a really good time writing that book. And
Oh,
fun, but like I'm in that like finishing, when you get to the end where you're like, okay, I this is the eighth draft. I know it's fine, but like I just can't let it go yet. So I have 1 week left to do it, and I'm, in that panic mode.
yeah, you're finishing up a book while you're trying to promote a new book, and that's a lot on your plate right now. So hang in there. But the story sounds great, so I can't wait to see that when it comes out. Probably next year, I imagine.
Summer of 26, and I forgot to
Okay.
mention thing. The young daughter meets a journalist. He's an intern. He's also in college along the way, and so there is the third timeline, or point of view also has a romance that's really fun.
Great. Wonderful. All right, great. Well, folks, if you love books, and I know you do, go grab your copy of Confessions of a Grammar Queen. You won't be sorry. Very fun read. You can also check out Eliza's website at elizaknight.com. Eliza, what social media platform are you most active on?
I would say Instagram, and I am at Eliza Knight there. And I post several times a day, but I always try to comment on everyone who leaves a message or comments on a post of mine as well.
Great, great. Well, thank you so much for joining me. It was great to reconnect with you and chat about confessions. I can't wait for readers to get their hands on this amazing story.
Thank you so much. It was really fun chatting about it and good to see you again, even if it's just online.
I know, right? Yeah, absolutely, my pleasure. Many thanks to everyone listening. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Undercurrents of Romance. You can find more information about the show at tracydevlyn.com/podcast. Undercurrents of Romance is a proud member of the Authors on the Air Global Radio Network. I'll be back soon with another great romantic read. In the meantime, enjoy the adventure, everyone.